According to McKinsey's 2021 Women in the Workplace paper, while representation of women in the workplace across all levels of the corporate pipeline did improve during the pandemic, there is still a broken rung on that first step onto the managerial ladder. And underrepresentation of women at top levels is still very prevalent. As of 2020, within corporate America, women only held 28% of senior vice president positions, and representation of women in the C-suite was only at 21%. Hello, my name is Lauren Sergi, and this is Talk Shop, the place where we connect with leaders and experts across multiple industries to discuss business and communication topics affecting us today. It's no secret that women are needed at senior management and executive positions, and that our road to getting there can vary significantly from men's. But while that road may have more bumps, there is lots we can do to smooth out and accelerate that journey. Here to talk about women's roads to the C-suite, as well as give outstanding advice and insights for getting there, is Marie Dzanis. Marie Dzanis is a powerhouse in the world of international investment. She is CEO of Northern Trust Global Investments and EVP and Head of Asset Management EMEA for Northern Trust Asset Management. Recognized with a Top Women to Watch award and a Top Women in Asset Management award, Marie has more than 25 years of industry experience. She's also held executive and leadership positions at iShares BlackRock, JP Morgan Asset Management, and Smith Barney. Marie has managed and has grown several lines of business in institutional, intermediary, and wealth businesses. Marie is a tireless advocate for diversity in business, as well as for the advancement of women in investing. Welcome, Marie Dzanis. I am so happy, after knowing you for so many years, to have you on my show. You're a highly respected leader in the investment and the banking world. You are a wonderful role model for up and coming executives, women professionals who are building their careers, who have reached top level in their careers and want to do more. So again, thank you for making the time in your very busy schedule to be with us here today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to have this chat.
So can you tell us a little bit, Marie, about your own journey to the C-suite? Because again, you've achieved a extremely high level in anyone's career, but of course the path for women to reach that level tends to look a little bit different. So what lessons or truths or just even stories do you have that you can share with us about your path to high level leadership?
Wow, there's so many lessons along the way. But I think I have a couple profound things that have resonated with me throughout the years. And if I think through, I would have to say one of them certainly is your style is one of the most powerful tools you have. I started work back in 1989. So in the 80s and 90s, think back to some Wall Street movies you may have seen, mostly male dominated in a very interesting environment. And I was in a sales pit floor selling municipal bonds where people were, beating their chests and ringing bells, cutting ties, you name it. And there was this one woman who was curled up in a corner. Her name was Rose. And she would sit on the phone and very softly talk to the person and have the most compelling story around, I have very few of these bonds left, and I think they'd be very appropriate for you. And let me tell you why. And guess who was the most effective one at sales? She was. And her style worked for her. And what helped me early on was that you have to have your style work for you and use that to the max. A couple other lessons. One is to trust your gut. I remember being early days in management, and I believe personally management's a calling, right? It's not a stepping stone. It really is something that you want to do. And somebody once told me, you're never a manager until you fire your first $1 million producer. And I think they meant you're never a manager until you do something difficult or exert your force and prove how powerful you are. But I was scratching my head thinking about why this was a badge of honor. Why was this something good? Why wouldn't you train them? Why wouldn't you? This is somebody delivering revenue into your firm. Why wouldn't you empower them? Why wouldn't you coach them up? And I remember exactly how I felt that day. I knew it was wrong. I wouldn't do it, but I didn't feel like I was going to move away from management. So I had to trust my gut. And that was another important lesson. Two quick more things I would highlight is make it easy. This is right up your alley, by the way. Make it easy for people to communicate with you.
Yeah.
Very few people tell you the truth. Feedback's hard for people because usually they don't want it, or they don't want confrontation, or they're not good at it. And, you have to get to the truth quickly. And you need to know as an executive, am I effective at this? Is this doing well? Will I lose this customer? Whatever it is. And instead of saying, how are things going? And watch somebody squirm with a whole bunch of platitudes, re-engineer the conversation, allow people the space to have critical discussion. So I recognize we've had a long relationship. Your business is important to me. I'm aware that we had 3 things happen in the past 4 months. Can you tell me what happened? Mm-hmm. Is there any way that we could resolve this satisfaction? How do we get back to great in your eyes? And really hear. They might tell you no. They might tell you they're leaving. But otherwise, if you don't ask that, you have 0 chance of rectifying the situation, and they just go away silently. The last thing I would say is at the executive table, it's a head game. Confidence and conviction is key. And if you cannot trip yourself up in trying to be perfect. Mm-hmm. And the thing I was thinking about the other day in prep for this, Lauren, was I was at a conference one time and there was a gentleman who threw down a statistic of 30% of the people do X, Y, and Z. And the person next to them was struggling to see if it was 29% or 32% and what sources were they, et cetera, and tripped them up because they were convicted on being perfect. Mm-hmm. And at this level, you don't have to be perfect. It is okay to give directional information if you disclaim it. And the funny thing is afterwards, I went up to the person and I said, where did you get 30%? And he said, I made it up. So it's who has got the power in the room, has the conviction. I would never encourage anybody to make anything up. But again, confidence goes a long way.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, that notion of that he made up the statistic to a degree. Perhaps, you grab a number out of thin air, but by the same token, having the confidence in your knowledge, in your expertise, in your ability, in the position that you are in to do the thing you are supposed to be doing, that in and of itself probably helped him arrive at a number that likely wasn't too far off reality. So having that comfort, that confidence to stand in your expertise, to stand in your knowledge and say, I think this is probably right, counts for an awful lot. And I would imagine is extremely important too for executives who are making a ton of decisions, a ton of different decisions in many, many, many areas all day, every day. You don't necessarily have the time or the wherewithal to be absolutely precise in everything, as long as that big picture idea is there, as long as the big picture is accurate, and they are then able to get your people to do the detail work. Or am I way off on that one? I just think
no, exactly. And that's why I said you disclaim it's directional. Yeah, you could say it's about 30%. But the concept is, and that's your credibility, because the second, if you say something that's completely made up, of course you would never compromise your integrity, right? But it's navigating in those moments and really being able to be comfortable with yourself and say, I don't fully have the answer in some cases.
I don't fully have the answer, but we can figure out what that is. Can you please go and look this up? And your story about Rose is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And it ties into many of the conversations that you and I have had about executive presence, because that comes down to the style. As something I'm always harping on about is the style, the image you cast is part of that message. But if the style doesn't fit you, if it's not authentic to you, it's going to be hard to wear it well. So for those who think that they need to enter into the testosterone-soaked environment and be that, I often hear people say, I could never be that. You don't have to. It doesn't strike me that you have been that or have tried to be anyone other than yourself. So with that notion of authenticity, do you have any recommendations for people who are trying to find their style, their authentic voice, but still wrap it up in that image of the executive that we need and who might be struggling with it? What would you recommend? What process would you recommend they go through to find that?
Actually, I have a T-bar exercise that I love to do. I'm a very big believer in strengths finders, meaning highlighting people's strengths as opposed to try and reinvent and overcome their weaknesses at all times. We still have to work on our weaknesses, but know your strengths and know what you do really well and play to your strengths. So simple exercise, I do this a lot with even high school age children and people who are thinking about changing careers. On the left-hand side of the paper, outline the things that either you're not good at or you don't enjoy doing. On the right-hand side of the paper, put the things that you are really good at, quite skilled, feel confident and comfortable. And if you look at that, you're going to see themes emerge. You might not like the details of proofreading, or you might not enjoy, minutia around numbers, or you might enjoy spreadsheets a lot, but you don't enjoy presenting, whatever it might be. And think about what your themes are and what does that reflect for you and your brand. And that's a great way to have a starting point, because every interview that they ask you, they say, what are some things that you need to do developmentally? And if you say something without a really thoughtful answer on, I'm self-aware of these items and I'm working on this, and here's what I've learned, that actually can turn something that you're developing into a strength, meaning that you're self-aware, what you have to work on and how to do that. Mm-hmm. So have that framing and then step back and say, what do I represent? I'm really good at. What's my brand? What do I want to be known for?
Yeah. What do I not want to be known for? That can go, it can absolutely go both ways. I have always found that identifying both ends of that message can really help get clarity on what the end message is that you want to convey, that you want to communicate, because really at all times you are telling people something about yourself, something about the way you think, the way you work, and so on. Now, there's going to be different images that we cast throughout our careers. An intern is not and should not be exactly the same as the executive. If that is the case with the image they are casting, there might be a problem on one end or the other there. But how does the image, the presence, that overall polish play into someone's advancement as they rise through the corporate ladder? How does this affect where they're going?
It's critical. Yeah. I mean, you're in this business, right? Yeah. Nonverbal is actually 70
on the ground.
Nonverbal is 70 to 93% of communication. And if you think of Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink, you can make up your mind within 5 minutes of whether or not you're going to do business with somebody. Yeah. Their Love Lab, it can predict with 90% accuracy the likelihood of people to stay married more than 15 years by observing them for 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So image, presence, polish, all of these things play a very important role. And my advice would be certainly get a speaking coach, like you, Lauren, you tell me the truth, let someone like yourself tear me apart, in private, because you need that honest baseline to start. Not everybody say, oh yeah, you did a great job, but did I accomplish the goal that I meant to get across these points? Did I articulate it well? Did the audience receive it well? You need to know that. Mm-hmm. I would also say get a body language coach. You send signals, whether or not you're even aware of it, to your audience. And so I started down that pathway to get a coach just so I could read my audience, understanding whether or not they were leaning in and listening and giving me buying signals or attention signals. And then I found out I could actually do some things that would better exude confidence. And you need all the help and support that you can get. And the last thing I would say is pick your platforms. Mm-hmm. Some of us have a lot to say in a lot of different topics, but what do you want to be known for? And so you need to be known for a few good things. So for example, personally, I'd like to be known for my personal 3 deal breakers is having high integrity, high drive, and effective execution. And, you want to be able to tie that into whatever thematic discussion you have on how that is important to you. So this is not just about polish. It's about critical communication skills on many different levels and paying attention and interacting.
Mm-hmm. And would you say that that's consistent throughout someone's career, or are there different areas that we should be focusing on as we develop and grow?
Yeah, I mean, at an executive level, everyone has got to have a certain bar to chin on competency, right? I would say if you're looking to get into a leadership role, if anyone is, I think tomorrow's leaders are radically human. So they have to be able to empathize. They have to be able to be agile. They have to be able to say with confidence that we'll figure this out and we don't have all the answers right now. I mean, look at COVID. Nobody had a playbook for COVID. And you have to be able to stand in front of your business, your team, your clients, your partners, and say things like, we don't have this figured out, but we will get through this and we will get the answers. And you can make the best available decisions with the best available information. And, that is all about communication.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to write, being able to speak effectively, and drive your message is one of the critical skills on top of the technical competencies you need for your job, I would say at every level.
Right. That the technical competencies I always see as, again, that's the baseline. That's kind of the bare minimum at any stage that you need to meet, because that's why you're there. But it's those indefinables. It's the dreaded word, soft skills. Oh, I hate that term so much, but it's what we use. It's those soft skills that actually set people apart. That's the big thing. So you were mentioning that you spent the time working with a body language coach to be able to read the nuances of what people were telling you through their nonverbals and what you were telling them through their nonverbals. So that's developing a strong handle on human behavior. And there's a bit of psychology in there. That could be considered a soft skill that doesn't necessarily immediately mean that you'll make the best decisions in terms of the technical stuff, but that helps you get there. That helps you be effective when you're working with your group. So soft skills are a really big deal. Now, along those lines, we have already mentioned communication as being a critical soft skill. Are there any others that you found are especially important for women executives or aspiring executives to demonstrate?
Things like the ability to be agile. Let me take a step back, as we think through some of the things that women specifically may do. If you believe in diversity, and that means you truly believe in having a different voice, and having different and sometimes dissenting voices around that table is important to have. It offers new perspective, helps you frame up matters. And we know statistically that companies that have diverse boards, greater than 33%, outperform their peers, right? Mm-hmm. So if we embrace diversity, the concept of diversity, we have to be able to bring that different voice to the table. And one of the challenges I've seen, and it's not just a women thing, but is the ability to navigate how to deliver different feedback. Are you open to hearing it? And sometimes, depending on the environment, they're not. So a couple tips that I've observed for people who are struggling with, I have to bring in a new concept, everybody else is agreeing, and I have a completely differing opinion. I have to learn how to enter in this environment and successfully disagree. One way of doing it might be ask for permission. Lauren, are you open to hearing a piece of feedback regarding your show? That's one way. We had one expression, can I put the fish on the table? Some people playfully say, you really want me to answer that? But it's a good way to start. Start thinking about how you gain permission to say something that's going to be difficult to hear and signal that you're going to give tough feedback. And I've observed with people who've had differing opinions go in forcefully, and it doesn't work. So if, for example, the firm consumes information, they love data, and you go in with a lot of conjecture and tell a story, you need to be aware that you have to lead with data and then tell the story. The other thing is Harvard University has a statistic that men need to, on average, have 30% certainty to take on more responsibility, and women on average need to have closer to 100. So another piece of thinking about skills and things women need to be aware of is women are great calculated risk takers. In fact, a study from LUMA, RIA in the US says that they could be actually more aggressive with investing, for example. But women need to be open to take the risks and make mistakes. So talk about your experience and talk about it. Sometimes what makes it easier is by saying what I have learned is, or I've tried this and this didn't work and here's what we're finding. And so that'll help you be less intimately connected with the findings, especially if it's very different. And if you make it more about the third party or the observation, it helps. So those are additional skills that I think are important for everyone to have around the table as they're trying to provide a different and diverse perspective, or think about having more confidence so they can reflect and take a risk differently.
Those are wonderful skills to develop. Oh, I love that. I love talking to you. Got such good nuggets. But those really are wonderful skills to develop, that notion of taking the risk and still finding ways of being confident about it as you're taking it. But also, really when you were talking about discussing, this is what I tried, this is what we learned, it didn't work, and so on. Basically learning how to look at what you're doing much more objectively, kind of taking it out of your head and putting it on the table so that if something does go wrong, well, that's fine. That is a thing that happened. It's not a reflection on me as a human being. It's simply a thing that happened. And those are the kinds of mindsets that I find help people become really outstanding communicators, because then every little step and misstep and trip and stumble doesn't shake their confidence or their willingness to try again. And then you develop more persistence, more confidence, more, just the sense of certainty that you are doing what you should be doing and that you are good at what you're doing. Now, mentorship, I'm gonna do a hard left here. I'm gonna look back at our questions and ensure I don't go too far off the game plan. Mentorship is a big deal in our careers. I know it's a topic that's important to you. We've spoken about it quite a bit. What role does mentorship play in our career advancement?
Well, I think a big role. But what I'd offer is some perspective on how you go about it.
Yeah.
First of all, mentors don't have to be perfect. So you don't have to find the perfect person that will break you down into the smallest parts and then rebuild you up and you arise out of ashes like the phoenix. That's not what we're looking for.
You don't need the guru on the mountaintop.
Exactly. And so I think about them in the terms of, there's probably 3 stages of mentors that you really need. One is early stage in your career. You need a cheerleader. That's the person who's sitting there saying, hang in there, you're doing a great job. Wow, this is wonderful, positive reinforcement and really good perspective. So that's kind of early stage. The second one is the gut check. You've made some pretty big decisions. You just handled it this way. Lauren, did I do this right? Was it the right thing to do? Help me understand and frame. And that's really your gut check. As we evolve, and I think this is even now, I've learned a lot, particularly over the past several years of my life. I'm thinking this is important earlier in your career too, is finding people who are your opposite to mentor you. And what I mean by that is, as an executive, you need to be influential to many different people. You need to gain buy-in and consensus or challenge and be able to navigate successfully. And sometimes we're sitting at a board table or in a meeting with someone who it thinks completely opposite of you. They're a linear thinker, you're not, or vice versa. And by understanding how they think, how you can successfully navigate what resonates with them, that is an important skill set for you to have. And I think you learn a lot because it's the person sometimes in the room that drives you crazy. When they speak, you're like, oh, goodness, what about them bothers you?
Yeah.
Do they have a really good argument? Is it the fact that someone's objecting to what you're saying? Do they process things differently? But again, this is about being effective with people. And so I've sought people out. I've been in a meeting completely on a different planet with them and say, help me understand how you're thinking about this, or like give me some feedback on, could I have done this a different way? And I've learned so much from those dialogues, and it helps you just get better and better.
I love the notion of looking for your opposite. Yes, you need the cheerleader. You absolutely need the cheerleader, especially at first when all of the self-doubt is there. The gut check is fantastic. That person who will tell you the truth. And the opposite, when you mentioned that if it's someone that, sometimes they kind of stick in your craw, I find that can happen both with people who are your opposites and with people who are your exact matches. Because in both cases, you'll often see the thing about you that is either missing or that you need to work on writ large. Okay. So yes, not just one mentor, there's going to be several different kinds. Now, I've heard a lot of different pieces of advice about for who this is. Now, we've already established we don't need someone perfect or a guru on the mountaintop, but I've heard recommendations that the mentor should be a senior manager in your company so they can help you along, so that they can connect you. I've heard others say that a mentor should be outside of your company so that you have that third party, disassociated view. They're not too close to the stuff that you're dealing with. They can be more frank, more open with you. Some say your mentor should be one level above you. Others say they should be really far ahead of you. What are your thoughts in terms of looking for mentors and where to say, I need this kind of individual or I need that kind of individual?
Well, it's interesting because I do think that people tend to gravitate towards people they like or identify with, and that's usually the go-to. They'll hear somebody speak and they'll say, "Oh, wow, will you mentor me?" or the like. I do think you want somebody who is willing to tell you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Back to my point about getting a good baseline for what reality is. And part of that is being able to ask somebody, are they willing to do some work with you and help you get better? So in a perfect world, that would presume that they've seen you in action in some way, shape, or form, had occasion to observe you in that capacity, and willing to take a little bit of time to give you feedback. Mm-hmm. And so, especially busy executives asking for permission. Would it be all right if I just checked in on just a couple of things, or I'd love some feedback? Start there, because a big assignment of mentoring, it doesn't have to be enormous at first. It could be a small ask that could blossom into, you had the opportunity to observe me at the board meeting. Would you mind just spending a few minutes giving me that feedback? Or I saw your reaction. Could I have framed that up a little bit differently? And if they click and connect, there might be a good way that you could tie up with that person and ask for mentoring.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't need to be an outright, will you be? I always think of, I believe it was Sheryl Sandberg who wrote in one of her books about people going around like little birds saying, are you my mentor? It doesn't necessarily need to be like that. It can be a shorter and a more fluid relationship.
Yes, but you have to do the work. That's another thing too. I've had a number of situations where people said, well, Marie, will you mentor this person? Yes, I would. I'd be happy to. Didn't know the person. And they would rock up to the meeting and they'd say, okay, impart your wisdom on me. And so what I always recommend is, before you're going to do any type of meeting or mentorship, especially if you don't know the person, do some work up front and say, here's who I am. Here's what I aspire to do. Here are some of the challenges I face. I think I'm good at this. I don't know if I'm good at that. Here's what I'd like to get out of that. Can you give me some advice and perspective on the following things? And I usually ask them to do the T-bar exercise, where they say, here are the things I'm really good at, my strengths, and here are my developmental opportunities. And mentoring is about taking on feedback, understanding how you're viewed by the workplace or your capacity of the role, is about how can I be more effective? That's all this is about. So asking them to spend a little bit of time with them, and asking someone to read a brief that you've prepared will make it easier to have more dialogues that get to the point.
Right. Excellent advice. Now I've got one more question for you as we wrap up. And this is kind of bringing it back from the personal development, the mentorship, back into the communication side of things. Visibility is crucial. If you want to advance, you have to be seen. That's a simple fact. And I found that it's even more important, of course, for younger women or for racialized women, because they are the ones who are more likely to simply be overlooked out of force of habit or whatever. Are there a few ways that you would recommend that women who are aspiring to building their roles, to reaching towards especially that executive level, for them to increase their visibility within the broader industry? Like, what can they do to be seen?
And, I've seen all different reasons why people have been overlooked. Sometimes they're very humble.
Yeah.
Some people aren't comfortable blowing their own horn. Sometimes they don't have confidence. They're not ready to express that they've mastered the world and they're ready to take on the next level, or they're not connected. They're not in the right circles. So I do think there's good news. You don't have to be fully buttoned up to get to the next level. You can signal some important things to your leadership teams or take actions, in probably a couple ways. One of the things I would say is learn how your managers or your company or your business likes to consume information. So if you are a storyteller and the firm is data-driven and you love just telling stories, it's not going to land as effectively. So look at meetings that have gone well or things that have moved through quickly and back things up with facts in that example, and then present those facts in advance and then provide the stories around it. The second thing is pay attention to what works in your company. The leaders, do they possess a trait? Usually a company has an ethos, a mantra, value proposition, a mission statement. Understand how real that is. Do they reward those activities? So if they're results focused, you got to produce results. If they're more political, you have to ask yourself, how diplomatic am I? Am I able to navigate fluid and uncomfortable situations? Do I need to work on that? Another thing is have your sound bites. Earlier in my career, I know that, I want to be perfect and button up with the perfect things to say in every moment. And the reality is we don't have that, right? But have some sound bites that buy yourself time, that you get put on the spot. We were talking earlier about the percentage growth or the 30%, which wasn't a real number, et cetera. Instead of stumbling over that, you can say, wow, allow me to confirm that and get back to you. But directionally, I think around 30% is where it works. Or if you're stuck with an unanswerable question, like, is there a God? You could say, wow, that probably warrants its own session on itself, but I can provide you a lens of what I'm seeing or what I've heard, and that actually buys you time and diffuses it. But those are pat answers that you can get in your vocabulary.
Yeah.
The last thing I'd say is definitely build your network. I see this as a gap for many women and many young people coming into the organizations, in a lot of different organizations. You may be busy. Women especially might be caregivers at home and very focused at work. They don't have time to go have drinks or go play golf or whatever it might be. No need. Just get on LinkedIn, join some networks, listen in on some of the presentations, provide comments. People have smart, bright comments, like on your LinkedIn. They provide feedback. People pay attention to that. That was pretty insightful, very interesting. So you'll find yourself interacting with people with the same passions, and how that translates back to work is you'll be with people who have the same priorities and sometimes the same challenges and successes. You'll be able to benchmark information from the company. So that adds value. You're better able to articulate the value that you're bringing, meaning I have some competitive knowledge and I have some really interesting insights that I've seen because I saw this video and we engaged in a dialogue. And sometimes that's easier to talk about in the third person as opposed to putting yourself out there and saying, I've solved the world's problems myself.
Yeah.
So those are things I would say are very tangible ways that that you can pay attention to trends, be more effective, shift your behavior, and buy yourself time to get to the right answer while you're thinking through some things.
Wonderful, wonderful advice, Marie. That's an excellent note to end this interview on. Thank you so much for letting me borrow your brain for this 20 odd minutes. I truly appreciate it. I know that people listening are going to get great value out of this. So again, thank you for making the time to be with us today. And to everyone who is watching, thank you for sitting down with Marie and I today for this little heart-to-heart. I always appreciate you coming by. And if you want to make sure that you can get other great interviews, that you don't miss a minute of what I've got coming up, such as brilliant people like Marie and other experts in their industry, be sure to head over to laurensergi.com, sign up in the pop-up, and I will send you my latest videos and interviews as they come out. So again, Marie, thank you for being here with us today. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you all on the next Talk Shop. Take care.